Hello and welcome to the News9 Plus show on the world's first news and current affairs OTT platform, News9 Plus. The Netflix OTT series IC814, The Kandahar Hijack, has attracted controversy. It's about the hijacking of Indian Airlines Flight 814. Now, this hijack plot was hatched by the Pakistan Army's ISI and terrorists of the Harkat-ul-Jihad in 1999. 5 hijackers commandeered an Indian Airlines aircraft that was flying between Kathmandu and New Delhi. The jet was flown to Kandahar in Taliban-controlled Afghanistan. The hijacking was a catastrophe. The Indian government let go of dreaded terrorists Omar Saeed Sheikh, Mushtaq Zargar and Maulana Masood Azhar in exchange for the lives of the 176 passengers and 15 crew. The released terrorists went on to plan bigger and bigger terror strikes against India. The 2001 Parliament attack and the 2019 Pulwama suicide attack were carried out by these same terrorists that were released in exchange for the IC814 passengers. Now, coming back to the series has evoked outrage among audiences with its sympathetic portrayal of the hijackers and depicting the Indian government as inept. Now, the Information and Broadcasting Ministry has summoned Netflix India chief Monica Shergill. And joining me to discuss this controversy is Kanchan Gupta, senior advisor to the Ministry of Information and Broadcasting, Sanjay Lazar, aviation consultant, and more importantly, someone who lost his entire family in an airline bombing, Air India's Kanishka in 1985. And in the studio with me are lawyer Sushant Chaturvedi and my colleague Aditya Raj Kaul. Gentlemen, welcome to the News9 Plus show. I want to start by asking Kanchan Gupta this. Kanchanda, you were in the PMO in 1999. What is it that you found objectionable about this Netflix series? And what do you propose to ask the chief of Netflix, the chief of the content of Netflix when the INB speaks to her tomorrow?
Well, I cannot talk about what will be communicated to the Netflix chief in India or what is expected of Netflix. But let me tell you what is found generally obnoxious and objectionable. One, the code names that were given to the hijackers, those code names have been intentionally used and their real names, which we know and which have been in the public domain since the hijacking happened, they have not been used and they have not been referred to. The purpose behind this is to communicate or to suggest that they were not, A, they were not Muslims, B, they were just young men out on a lark, and yes, C, to normalize the entire hijacking, which is really hurtful, because as everybody knows, one passenger, and he was a young man who had gone to Kathmandu for his honeymoon, yes, and he was returning from Kathmandu. He was shot dead, and he was shot dead for no obvious reason.
Right.
And to say that these hijackers were normal people and that some sort of a Stockholm syndrome, yes, developed the hijacked passengers and the hijackers, and the hijackers went and hugged and kissed the pilot. All this is bunk.
Right.
And why are you doing this after so many years? Because you want to rewrite the history of one of the most worrisome terrorist attacks which India faced, and that was the hijacking of IC814. And those who were around, those of your colleagues who were around those, yes, days, they would know how stressful it was for the government of India.
Right.
That the opposition actually, and at that time it was the Congress which was in the opposition, they said that they would go with the government on whatever it decides.
Yes.
Subsequently, after the whole thing was resolved, you would know that a special law was brought in to amend and revise hijacking laws of India to
Yes.
provide for the death sentence, and a strategic policy was adopted as to how government should respond if a hijacked aircraft were to be used as a missile or weapon of mass destruction. And you don't do all these things if the hijacking was a teddy bear's party.
Yes, absolutely. Hijacking a teddy bear's party, and very important points coming out there from Mr. Kanchan Gupta. The fact that rewriting history seems to be one of those. Aditya, we were just talking about it a little while earlier, that the humanizing of these hijackers, normalizing it as what Mr. Gupta mentioned, that treating it like a teddy bear party, seems to be part of the plot. But it's always been the ISI's game. Deception has been part of all the plots, whether it is 2611, whether it is Kandahar. They always have an element there to make it look like, Indians have carried out the attack. 2611, for instance, we were talking, Mr. Gupta, a little while earlier about the fact that it was like, this series was like referring to the 2611 attackers by their given names, by their alter egos. Samir Chaudhary, for instance, was the name that Kasab was given. He was supposed to be a college student from a college in Bengaluru. But Aditya, what's the larger point here that you're seeing in this? Is this a deliberate attempt to rewrite history, to craft an alternate narrative that, there are innocent people caught in this and the hijackers were just, part of this thing, and there was no great conspiracy behind all of this?
Sandeep, before I even venture into the controversies that have erupted after IC814 of Anubhav Sinha was released, I would say I've seen this at one go, the entire series. I would say, and I have seen quite a bit of content, I've made quite a bit of, documentaries around this subject. It's a terribly made documentary. It's a terribly made documentary, especially from a well-known filmmaker like Anubhav Sinha, who one would have thought would have researched, would have written, would have directed this in a certain manner to respect the reality and not fictionalize it. He has just picked up two books, one of the pilot and one of the chief crew members, and just selected some of the paragraphs and stories and then fictionalized it as per his own convenience. There are remarkable and well-known actors in this. Nasruddin Shah, Arvind Swamy, Pankaj Kapoor, many others. But what have they delivered? I mean, there is great acting by some standards by some of them, but completely gone waste. I mean, I was really expecting a powerful story of how this unfortunate incident took place. Now, even from this perspective of perhaps director being anti-establishment and leftist and would have his own orientation towards, even from that standard, it's a terrible film because he hasn't been able to convey that desperation in government of India. He hasn't been able to convey the crisis that erupted in the PMO crisis management group meetings, or how in Punjab also, one would have expected that the Punjab police or the commandos will stop the aircraft, but they were not able to do it. Cinema-wise, cinematography-wise or otherwise, I think it's a complete eyewash. Otherwise also, when we go into the facts of the picture, a comedian is shown as NSA Ajit Doval, the current NSA, who was at that time a lead negotiator, who spent considerable time. You remember his pictures under the IC814 in Kandahar, and those are historic pictures. Nothing of that sort has been shown. The entire negotiation with the team has been shown in a very fun manner. Passengers are almost seen in some scenes, playing Antakshari or celebrating with the the hijackers, and hijackers as some humane creatures as part of some revolution.
So that's what Kanchan Gupta mentioned, the Stockholm syndrome, Aditya. The fact that, not just the passengers, but the filmmakers also seem to be held hostage with this Stockholm syndrome. But Sushant, you've seen the series as well. What are your observations about this? As a lawyer, just give us a frank opinion on what you just saw.
So I would not like to talk as a lawyer, I would like to talk as a viewer of the series here. So from the beginning, I would like to add a disclaimer that I am a free speech absolutist. I believe everybody has a right to speech. So I would just be giving my criticism to the makers of the film by asking why some additions and omissions were done. And I'll point out some specific instances. Point number one is that prior to the release of this web series, Mr. Anubhav Sinha gave an interview in which he talked about the camaraderie that later developed between the hijackers and the pilot.
Right.
Was that necessary? Number one.
Yes.
Number two, the passengers, as Aditya rightly pointed out, they were spotted playing Antakshari with
right.
the hijackers on the last day of the hijack. Was that necessary? Number three, one of the crew members was shown to have a romantic angle with one of the hijackers.
Right.
So was that necessary? Now I'll come to an omission.
Right.
If you are showing a factual documentary of the entire event,
yes.
the fact that the passengers were robbed of nearly 71,000 rupees at the end of the hijack
yes.
was conveniently omitted, and the hijackers clearly stated, it's in many news reports, that they have taken this money to build a Kandahar hijack memorial.
Right.
And now I'll come to my final point, which is the complete hogwash
yes.
of the whole situation. So I was reading an article in respect to Mr. Wali Ahmad Muttawakil,
yes.
who was the then foreign minister of the
Taliban.
Of the then Taliban
yes.
regime. So I would just like to read this extract, if I have your permission.
Yes, of course.
So the article was in Rediff News.
Yes.
It states, India wants the United States to quiz Afghanistan foreign minister under the Taliban regime, Wakil Ahmad Muttawakil, who was presently in US custody, 2002.
Right.
Muttawakil played an important and adverse role during the hijack, leaving the then foreign minister Jaswant Singh red-faced by going back on several commitments.
Yes.
Wakil, who acted as an interlocutor at Kandahar, was also hostile during the negotiations. He had assured Jaswant Singh, who landed in Kandahar with
yes.
3 terrorists, that the hijackers and the terrorists would be held in Afghan custody until all Indians left Kandahar. However, in front of the Indian officials, they were given a jeep in which they victoriously drove away.
Right.
So the point is, in the entire series, as Aditya has also said,
yes.
the Indian establishment and the Indian diplomats who were present, they were shown as the one who were going back on their words and going back on their promises.
Absolutely.
And the Taliban foreign minister was shown as a person with the moral high ground, who is actually trying to help the situation and try to, save humanity.
Yeah, so this is like rewriting history.
Exactly.
What
usually
Kanchan Gupta mentioned.
Usually,
yes.
Sandeep, what also happens is that, I agree that they were code names, because I have made a documentary on Zahur Mistry, and I broke the story of when Zahur Mistry was killed in Karachi.
Absolutely.
That still remains a mystery. But, Sandeep, even if they were code names,
yes.
even if it was Chief, Doctor, Burger, Bola and Shankar, Bola and Shankar being the Hindu names,
yes.
at the end of the film, he could have very well suggested, like in the Ministry of External Affairs statement, that these are the real names of these terrorists.
Absolutely.
They are Pakistani nationals,
yes.
and they were responsible. And lastly,
yes.
Anubhav Sinha, what he tries to do politically, his own agenda, that he gives a clean chit to the Pakistani ISI.
Yes.
He says that ISI is not involved at all. It was Osama bin Laden, it was, some terror groups based in Afghanistan, and perhaps Taliban was also trying to remain silent, but nothing about the Pakistani ISI. Imagine giving a complete clean chit to Pakistan, not realizing the consequences of this same, and how Pakistan Foreign Ministry now will utilize this on international forums to suggest how filmmaker has given us a clean chit.
See, I mean, that is the larger point of this narrative building, which Kanchan has mentioned, and of course, Aditya, you've highlighted as well. But I want to come to Sanjay Lazar, who's been listening to all of this very patiently. Sanjay, I saw your tweets that you posted. I mean, it comes, it comes out of your anguish. I could see it spilling out over on Twitter. The fact that this humanizing of hijackers, of normalizing of terrorism. You lost your entire family in 1985. Do you fear the day when you will have movies made on Talvinder Singh Parmar, on what, what a wonderful guy he was, and he played Antakshari with, whoever, and, what a lovely neighbor he was. I mean, what is the larger picture that's going on here when you're looking at normalizing and whitewashing and, creating alt history, as Kanchan Gupta mentioned?
Well, first of all, thanks, Sandeep, for having me, and it's great to see Kanchanda and Aditya on the show. I'm just shocked by this show, first of all. I condemn it because it's portrayed our former Prime Minister Vajpayee ji in a poor light, Brijesh ji, Jaswant Singh, our entire government at that time, and a lot of this didn't happen. I must tell you, I first watched it purely as a cinematic production.
Right.
Then I started getting messages and calls from crew of that flight. I've spoken over the last 4 days to families in Oakland and all over the world, Geneva and stuff like that, and they're distressed by this. Me too. I'm really shocked. It's not cinematic license. First of all, it should have had a big, bold statement that this is pure fiction. They have fictionalized the entire thing. Half of the things that Anubhav Sinha has shown here did not happen. It is purely to discredit the government of that day and the current day, to discredit that, obviously he's got left-wing leanings. But as a family, as a person who's lost his entire family in a bombing, terrorist bombing, I feel devastated. I can imagine what the flight engineers' kids are feeling, or what the chief flight purser is feeling, what some of the air hostesses who are now in the US or retired are feeling. I've spoken to them. It's absolute nonsense. Even technically, let me tell you, there are flaws in every aspect of the movie.
Right.
There are no valves like that for a pilot to do this. He talks of a Pakistani guy sitting in a Dubai airbase. I mean, tell me which country allows a foreign security guard sitting in an air traffic control of Dubai airbase to repeat the Quran to him?
Yes.
It was a guy, Abdullah, who Mr. Jaswant Singh and the Sheikh of that day, Maktoum, had sent there. So lots of rubbish in this. I'm sorry. It's a very slick made, high budget film with great actors, no doubt. But I think it's time we have censorship in OTT. I'm sorry. I'm a free speech advocate, but there's a limit. You're taking a real event and you're converting it into some trash like this, which is hurting people. There's a dead person.
Yes.
There's a young lady who got widowed. There are cabin crew who still bear the scars.
Yes.
They show hijackers laughing. Every single passenger was bound and was literally blindfolded throughout the flight. It doesn't show that. They were beaten. Satnam and Rupin were slashed and hammered.
Yes.
No girl was hit. It was a flight person. They don't show Rupin's body being carried off by two crew. No pilot went to fix any toilet thing. It's the hijackers who went there down to pick up their guns, extra guns and grenades. Nobody came on board and put guns. It was obviously somebody from the ISI with diplomatic, pass who's come in and handed over to these guys. There's so much, and I'd put a tweet. I'm glad, Sandeep, you mentioned the tweet. Twitter blocked me and deleted all my tweets. So I'm locked out of my account. I had done with photographs, so I'm going to now blog it. There are so many factual. I wrote to Airbus. I found out details of this aircraft. This is absolute rubbish. And we need to, make sure that we put out, either you put out a big warning that this is pure fiction, Bollywood stuff. Don't intersperse, videos of Ajit Doval and Vajpayee ji and Jaswant Singh ji and Brijesh ji. Kanchan worked in that PMO, and I remember it gives the feeling that this is a documentary. Right. This is a drama. It is a fiction. You look at the amount of people it's affected across the country.
Yes.
And you glorified the Taliban, glorified the ISI, giving them a clean sheet. What a joke this is.
What a joke indeed, Sanjay. And in fact, I'm going to ask Mr. Gupta this. The fact that, you've given the ISI a clean sheet, Mr. Gupta, the fact that what Aditya just mentioned, it's the ISI that's been behind all of these attacks, whether it's 1993, whether it's 2006, 2008, 26/11 Mumbai, and of course the Kandahar 1999 hijack. And Anubhav Sinha comes from a city that's lost over 700 Mumbaikars to the ISI between 1993 and 2008. What's the larger damage that a project like this could cause? As Aditya mentioned, tomorrow the Pakistan Foreign Ministry might pick this movie up and say, look, we've been given clean shit by Bollywood. I'm reminded, Aditya, of the time when General Musharraf told Aishwarya Rai, please don't act in movies that show Pakistan in poor light. He's not worried about the Indian Army, he's worried about Bollywood and its soft power. What's the larger narrative here, Mr. Gupta?
Let me respond to it in three parts. One, if you recall the Bombay terrorists, the terrorists whom Pakistan sent across to Bombay for the night of massacres, all of them were wearing what we call maulis or kalebas on their wrists.
Yes.
Those are the red threads that Hindus wear. And the whole idea was to convey the impression that they are actually Hindus, then they are from India, and they are behind the terrorism. And had we not been able to capture Kasab alive, all of this and more details would not have surfaced. The intention behind giving these code names to the hijackers was similar, to sort of confuse people about their real identity and to distance Pakistan from the incident. Now, the problem is that as subsequent investigations have shown, and again, these are details in the public space, the weapons were provided to the hijackers by members, and I repeat, by members of the Pakistan embassy in Kathmandu.
Right.
They came to the airport. They had their own network over there. They actually came up to the aircraft and they handed over the weapons to the hijackers, and that is how the weapons were not detected at the time of screening of the physical screening which happens at security points. Number two, the three terrorists who were released to secure the freedom of the hijacked passengers.
Yes.
All of them subsequently landed up in Pakistan, and all their terror activities were coordinated and committed from the soil of Pakistan. We know who Daniel Pearl's killer is, and that he is based in Pakistan. And lastly, the hijackers, if you remember, like Sanjay just now mentioned, they jumped onto a pickup truck, and that truck was then tracked. It was GPS tracked to Pakistan. Now, to say that Pakistan has no role in it, that ISI had no role in it, I mean, this kind of brazen PR stuntgiri by an Indian filmmaker, and I really don't care how accomplished he is, or how good he is, or his politics. Those things are inconsequential. The fact is that you are an Indian filmmaker, you are using a platform which is recognized as an intermediary platform. You are using them to put out propaganda, and that propaganda is aimed at whitewashing Pakistan. I would like to know where are they coming in from? Where is Anubhav Sinha and those who funded the project, where are they coming in from? And lastly, you know, it is Aditya mentioned Dovalji, I mean, who was then, I think, if I'm not wrong, with IB, and to make a caricature out of him. They don't even know who he is, what his contribution to India's national security has been.
Yes.
And in any case, he was not the NSA at that time. The NSA at that time was Brajesh Mishra, and they have taken all these chances. Brajesh Mishra is dead and gone. The other key players in the entire episode, Atalji, Jaswant Singh ji, they are dead and gone. And Advani ji, regrettably, is in no position to speak up and contest these alt facts. So they have timed it very well. Yes. They have waited all this, and they are doing it now in a methodical manner. Yes. And irrespective of whether or not I work for the government of India, as a citizen of this country, I feel appalled. Yes. I'm outraged that a foreign-based platform is broadcasting and amplifying content which sort of targets India's national security interests. And this is something which, as I said, you are rewriting history, and sorry, you can't do it. You just can't do
absolutely.
it. You should not be allowed to
Thank
do
you.
it.
Thank you very much, Mr. Gupta. Rewriting history, that's one of the big concerns coming out of this Netflix OTT series IC814. The fact that the filmmakers may have unwittingly distanced Pakistan from complicity in the hijack. Indeed, not just the Pakistan ISI, but the Pakistan military as well, which has carried out this hijacking. As our esteemed panelists have just told us, that there's a wealth of information, evidence out there to suggest that it was the Pakistan ISI and the Pakistan military that planned these attacks, and these hijackers were just pawns. But humanizing them, dignifying them has consequences, and that's a story that we'll be following very closely. Do keep watching News9 Plus. Thank you very much, Mr. Gupta, Sanjay Lazar, Sushant, and Aditya Raj Kaul for joining us this evening. Did the IC814 hijackers get away scot-free? Well, far from it. They're now running for their lives. On the 1st of March 2022, Zahur Mistry, alias Bhola, was killed in Karachi in Pakistan by unknown gunmen. The other hijackers too are living in fear. Who's after them? You can watch our short documentary, Hunting the Hijackers by Aditya Raj Kaul, only on the News9 Plus app.
You don't strike deals with terrorists. You have to be able to assert your rights, your national interest. I'm glad that a new India has found a way to at least take revenge. Intelligence agencies who want to be assertive must have long memories. One down, two to go.
In Bangladesh, the situation has become increasingly difficult for minorities, particularly Hindus, following the fall of the Sheikh Hasina-led government on the 5th of August. Since then, at least 49 teachers from minority communities have allegedly been forced to resign. Some have even faced physical attacks, according to multiple media reports. From policemen to bureaucrats to now teachers. Why is the interim government, or rather forces close to them, going after those perceived to be close to deposed Prime Minister Sheikh Hasina? Joining me to discuss this are Ambassador Bhaswati Mukherjee, Salim Samad, senior journalist from Dhaka, and in the studio with me is my colleague Deepak Badana. I want to start by asking Salim Samad this. Salim, you know, very disturbing images coming out of Bangladesh in the last couple of days. Teachers being attacked, surrounded, beaten up, forced to resign. What's going on really? Why are teachers now being targeted?
Unfortunately, everybody is targeted. You are not talking about only teachers. A journalist has also been kicked out from.
Of course, they've been murdered as well. Yes.
And then no journalist was not murdered. I'm sorry.
I'm referring to the body of a journalist who was found in a...
She committed suicide. I did the investigation.
Yes, okay.
Reporters Without Borders did an investigation, and it was found that she had committed suicide because she made a Facebook note of dying before few hours before she plunged into that lake. That's another... I can see the Indian media is making a lot of noise about this woman journalist, this poor woman. Okay. I'm not talking about only the teachers, but it happened all over all professions. We cut across the doctors, engineers, even lawyers, for example. They were kicked out from the court. They cannot defend their lawyers, their clients. This has also happened in 1971. After 16th of December 1971, all the who had worked or served during the 1971, means the Pakistan army, Pakistan, erstwhile Pakistan, they were all kicked out of all the departments, from top to number one to top to down one. Even the journalist was also kicked out, or it happened in after 16th of December. And it continued for more than a year. So I am afraid that whether this phenomenon will continue for a year. That
My God, another year of this, Salim Samad. Ambassador Mukherjee, another year of this? I mean, why is Bangladesh literally eating itself from within?
Well, Sandeep, thank you for having me on your show. In response to what has just been stated by my Bangladeshi interlocutor, and my parents come from the same region, Dhaka, Bikrampur, I would like to point out that what happened in 1971 was a reaction to the genocide by the Pakistani army on unarmed Bangladeshi civilians of East Pakistan then. The murder, the gruesome murder of university professors, for example, in Dhaka University, where my mother studied, and the reaction, the strong reaction of the people of Bangladesh to this genocide, as a result of which, it may be remembered, that 10 million East Pakistanis of different religions came and sheltered in my home state of West Bengal. What is happening now cannot be compared in any way, either in scale or dimension, first of all, but also by reason of the there is no logic in throwing out teachers or lawyers or whoever else has been labeled just because of their religion, because the very creation of today's Bangladesh was based on the language agitation that the Bengali language, culture and civilization matter much more than religion, and that religion is an intrinsic part of that language, culture and civilization, which the then West Pakistanis refused to accept, and in fact looked down on East Pakistan as being inferior because they would recite the Quran, for example, in Bengali and not in Arabic, that they looked different from what they would call them the Ashrafs, etc. And it was a semi-racist in approach. What is happening now is that there seems to be a popular anger against the former Prime Minister of Bangladesh, who on her own decided to take refuge in India on the basis that she would be then moving to some other Western country, which has not yet happened. And in return, the popular anger against the former Bangladeshi Prime Minister seems to have transferred itself to the hapless Bangladeshi citizens whose religion happens to be that of Hinduism or Buddhism, etc., leading to, for example, the desecration of the statue of Rabindranath Tagore, who composed Amar Sonar Bangla, or burning down of the ICCR, or the burning down of the ISKCON building, etc. This irrational anger, one would have hoped, would have died down by now. So what is of concern, I would reiterate to my Bangladeshi interlocutor, who perhaps his ancestors like mine lived in the same green and fertile fields of Dhaka Bikrampur, is that this irrational anger should be immediately controlled. Law and order should be reinstituted, because Bangladesh, like India, cannot change its neighborhood. So Bangladesh is dependent on India for so many things, including electricity, power, food, etc. In return, we depend on them, for example, for good fish, which has completely dried up, I'm sorry to say, in our fish market in Chittaranjan Park in Delhi, etc. These are two countries which are bound to each other. We cannot change our geography, we cannot change our neighborhood. We have to live in peace and harmony. And the best way to do that is to stop revenge killing, to calm things down, and to make the people of Bangladesh understand that while they are perfectly free to change their rulers, they should not take out their anger on hapless, innocent citizens of Bangladesh, not citizens of India. If they are citizens of India, tell us, we'll take them back. But they are your citizens, and you have to protect them.
Right, absolutely. Very, very, very strong statement there from Ambassador Mukherjee. But I'm going to ask Salim Samad one more question before I go to my colleague Deepak Badana in the studio. Salim, you know, the fact that Ambassador Mukherjee mentioned that it is Bangladeshi citizens who are being targeted, just as it was East Pakistani citizens who were targeted in 1971. It led to a exodus of refugees. There was a genocide. There were 10 million citizens who were pushed out into Indian states, leading to a destabilization of the situation. You see something similarly happening in 2024, more than half a century later, because if minorities are targeted, it stands to reason that they will leave the country and they will move into states near Bangladesh, which is the Indian northeast. And that has a potential of destabilizing India's northeast. There are already a lot of statements coming out of regional political parties saying that they will not tolerate any such influx of refugees. Is there any fear of this actually happening now, given the fact that these attacks on minorities have been unrelenting from what we've been seeing here in India? Salim.
Thank you. First of all, I don't want to continue where she has left, Ambassador. In 2008 and 2001, when Khaleda Zia came to power, she also did the same thing. When her party took control of the government, her government had literally flushed out all the journalists, doctors, engineers, bureaucrats, you just name a profession. They were kicked out from all the sections of the department, even from the private company. So a similar thing has been done when Sheikh Hasina came to power in 2009, January. You have to, if you want to really debate on this issue, you also have to take this also into account. 2001, October, and 2009 in January. Both the leaders, both the political, both the women, both the Begums did the same thing, doing purging. So this is a legacy, or I cannot stop it. But this is definitely a very unfortunate. But when you are talking about migration, yes, it is very interesting that Dr. Ranavit Samadda did a very interesting study on the border and the border migration. And she, according to his, book that I have read, and many of you must have read, they have mentioned that the majority who has migrated from Bangladesh were Muslims. Or he has to challenge Dr. Ranavit Samadda, or to bring him in the studio. Majority are Muslim. Right now, majority have crossed the border after the change of, or the deposed Sheikh Hasina on 5th of August. Majority who had crossed to the border, they are Muslim. They are all Awami League leaders, Awami League, different level of leaders, have crossed to the border. They have gone through Assam, and of course they have to pay a hefty amount. Even from the Sundarban, they have escaped to the Indian Sudan. So the porous border, despite this barbed wire, you cannot stop it, because they had paid more than 10 lakh, 20 lakh, even 1 crore of Bangladesh rupees.
It's alarming. It's alarming what you mentioned, Salim. Some of the fact that it is that refugee, influx continues into India. And Deepak, this is something that we've been discussing here very closely. The fact that how this influx of Bangladeshi politicians or refugees has the potential to destabilize the Northeast. You buy this thing of what Salim Samad has been saying, that it's actually just a cycle of retribution, that every time a Begum comes to power over there, they flush out all the previous regime thing? Or is this much more insidious this time around? The fact that minorities being targeted, Bangladesh possibly becoming another Pakistan, God forbid.
Let's look at it in the two parts of the problem, in your question. As Mr. Samad has said, yes, there is a definitive pattern in Bangladeshi politics. The statement that says that winner takes all. So Bangladesh seems to go through these cycles. Every time a new government comes, there is retribution and people are kicked out. And that seems, these leaders then come with new promises which they fail to live up to sooner or later. And then the older regime comes back, they do pretty much the same thing. So there seems to be a pattern in Bangladeshi politics. And it is only up to the Bangladeshi people to rectify the situation, to ensure peaceful transfer of power, for one thing.
Yes.
Now, coming to the second part of the question, while there may be a lot of, shall we say, grievances against the previous regime, and even people who are seen to be beneficiaries of the previous regime, or for that matter, people who were proponents of that regime. It can, however, not be denied that a lot of times there are elements of society that go out and target minorities as and when such situations occur. So I wouldn't be surprised that in the year 2000, in 2009, as Mr. Samad says, the minorities would have been at the receiving end. And for what reason? Just because they are vulnerable. So I think it is pretty much up to the Bangladeshi state to solve this issue.
Right, it's up to the Bangladeshi state to solve this issue. There doesn't seem to be a state, Deepak, from what we see now. The caretaker government has been unable to crack down on this violence. But Ambassador Mukherjee, the Prime Minister is going to meet the head of the caretaker government in Bangladesh, very shortly at the BIMSTEC forum. What do you think the Prime Minister is likely to convey to him when he meets him? He's raised the issue of the attacks on minorities, on Hindus, in his conversation with the President of the US. What is he likely to convey to the head of the caretaker government, the chief advisor?
I think he is likely to convey that India played a very important role in the creation of today's Bangladesh, because India believed that the secular ethos of Bangladesh, and it's still a secular country, is a concept that India believed in. And the plight of the 10 million East Pakistani refugees, both Muslims and Hindus, who had turned the whole of Sialda railway station like into a massive refugee camp that we handled on our own with no foreign aid, was not a tenable situation for India, and therefore we had to help the Mukti Bahini to liberate and help the refugees to go back. Today's Bangladesh was despite whatever the Bangladeshi people have legitimate right to criticize their former Prime Minister, Bangladesh was on a rapid development track. It had come out of its LDC status. It was, in fact, being held up by many Western entities as an example of a developing country which was developing and in some aspects faster than India. Its educational indices were better than India. Okay. Now, in such a situation, you have a messy transition of power, but you have a very respected Nobel laureate, 80 plus, who is trying to reassure, but his reassurances are not being respected at the grassroots level or by the very people who he is supposed to trust, because the political parties are getting impatient and asking him when does he intend to hold elections, while he is trying to say that he is trying to create the necessary conditions by which free and fair elections can take place. Under those circumstances, given the fact that Prime Minister discussed in great detail the attacks on Hindus and minorities in Bangladesh with President Biden, and will surely continue to do so with Biden's successor, whoever it is, I am confident that he would tell the present head of the Bangladeshi government, Muhammad Yunus, whom I have met many times when I was ambassador in UNESCO, is a very respected figure, that the kind of public anger that is rising in India, not just in West Bengal, my home state, or the Northeast, but all over, including in North India,
absolutely,
it cannot be restrained forever. Right. If the attacks on Hindus and the targeted killings of Hindus and the manner in which Hindus are being targeted and are being chased all over, the manner in which Hindu women are being told, convert if you want to be safe, this kind of situation one did not expect ever to happen in Bangladesh. It could have happened in Afghanistan or Pakistan, but we are much better of Bangladesh.
Absolutely.
If it continues in this manner, and given the fact that yes, we are a functional and functioning democracy with very strong armed forces, we will have to secure our frontiers much better than we are presently doing. It's not a question of cutting the fence. We will have to win regiments of the Indian Army and secure the entire border from the northeast to West Bengal, including chicken's neck. I don't buy the story that people are just buying us for 1 crore rupees. I would like to tell my Bangladeshi colleague that I don't know about his country, but India is not for sale. India's BSF is not for sale. India's armed forces are not for sale. We will do what it takes to secure our border. We will do what it takes to stop it. And if things are crossing over, then he should reflect that the conditions in Bangladesh are such that even Bangladeshi Muslim citizens don't feel safe. So then what would be the condition of Bangladeshi Hindu citizens, Buddhist citizens, Jain citizens, etc.?
Yes, absolutely. Ambassador Mukherjee, I'm afraid we're completely out of time here, but thank you very much for joining us here on this broadcast on talking about the attacks on minorities in Pakistan, in Bangladesh, and of course the attacks on teachers and journalists. This is of great concern for us here in India because of the potential influx of refugees from Bangladesh. That's a story we'll be tracking very closely over here. Thank you for watching.